that we will just tap into people who are up. And good morning. Good morning. Greetings and salutations from Pops. And man, oh man, it is early for me, but it is such a blessing to be able to talk to this guy. I've become such a fan of Gray and Wakizashi'S Teahouse. I'm getting pretty close, I think. I think I'm getting pretty close.
It sounds good. Sounds
Yes,
good.
man. Thank you again for spending time with me, and let's talk some the Batman and all things Batman, comic books, our collecting history, and some other cool stuff. So let's talk about this film and what your initial thoughts were. I know you've done some videos and you've talked about it a little bit, but let's kind of break down your thoughts on a 3-hour Batman film for you, because that is probably one of the biggest hurdles the film has. Is like we are going to tell a whole lot of Batman at the theater for
Yeah.
folks.
Okay, well, it's great to be here, Pops. Thank you so much for inviting me on your channel. I'm looking forward to this live stream. Like you say, looking forward to talking Batman, all kinds of Batman. For the movie, for the latest one, I've seen it twice, I think like you, and the second time I really felt the time. I really felt it drag, especially from the second half. What do you think about that? The first half is great, I love it, but the second half, I lost interest a little bit.
I lost interest quite a lot, and I will say even in the first half, the scenes I like. So the scene in the subway, the different shots around the city. Then he has the action, the little fight scene. There's the scene on the motorcycle. The one thing I can say is, like, if you were trying to make this film and you were trying to get down to 2 hours, there are even, 1 seconds here, 2 seconds there, 5
Yeah.
seconds here that could all be shaved out. And I can see in repeat watchings that does feel a lot more tedious. And I felt exactly the same way on the last part of the film, that once you got to the first, and again, for anyone who hasn't seen this, shame on you. Spoiler, I don't even do spoiler alerts anymore, but reality is it's just, this is where we're at, in that when Riddler surrenders, he's at a cafe. From that point on, the movie just kind of derails into kind of a mess. It's lost its identity. It can get kind of chaotic. It drives all over the map. And I really just lose interest. I really, really have very little interest in even a second viewing of that last sort of sequence of things.
To me, it felt like it was like almost tacked on, added on, as an afterthought. Like you say, the film could have ended easily, like much earlier, and you wonder why. Why did they? Do you think that was director's decision, or do you think that's more the studio's decision?
It just feels like studio notes, doesn't it? It just
Yeah.
felt like, and so, and my thing was, and again, I'm gonna just fan fiction you for a second here on this too. Like, I could make the third act work better because they went through all the trouble to rewrite some of the Wayne history and make a Thomas Elliot drop, who is basically the Hush character. So I'm like, if we'd gotten to the final scene, or sorry, if we'd gotten to Arkham and he visits Arkham and the Riddler's making his craziness, and then he just basically says, "You don't think I'm in charge, do you? You don't think that I'm the only one?" And then he shows up at the stadium thing, and it's not just these token YouTube people that he's showing up. That there's a little shot of Hush in the rafters, and Hush gets away. Like, there's another big baddie out there somewhere, and he's in over his head. He has no idea how bad this is. It would have given the scene a better depth, because you would have known there's another person pulling some of the strings. It can feel different because now we're not only in the Riddler's world, there's also someone else. And then your sequel is made for you. You have this multiple villains, you have Hush, you can tie easily now. It's like giving you a softball pitch to tie in Court of Owls, and the government corruption story can continue. And it's like we just missed like one or two little key elements to make that work. And it makes my head hurt to know that it was that simple and they didn't do it.
It seemed like a crazy decision not to do it, didn't it? It really did. Yeah, I thought about that. I thought about Hush as soon as you heard the name Tommy or Thomas Elliot. So they could have set that up so easily. And going back to your point, Pops, about the finale they had with the 5 or 6, however many it was, fake Riddlers all dressed up like, I didn't like that at all. To me, that was a bit of a dig at the current climate, the current times. Not just YouTubers and streamers, but the whole. I don't know. I don't want to say the words on YouTube, but this military-esque, like probably white men thing mentality that's going through the world at the moment. It wasn't Batman. It turned into something more like what would you say, like a thriller or something, a suspense thriller. It just wasn't Batman in that scenes for me.
Yeah, and I think it was almost like, because so with Batman, and for those of you that are not comic collectors, a a lot of the different tones of Batman are kept very separate in the comic book. So a Batman comic
Yeah.
book is different from a detective comic book, and then you have things like Legends of the Dark Knight and Shadows of the Bat, and these things. They're all just different, and I'm not trying to. Every one of them are going to have different issues and sequences that are, that are worthy of conversation and analysis. I felt like we were cruising along in a great detective story, and then suddenly we're going to shift, and a Legends of the Dark Knight writer came in, and he's going to write just this final sequence with these, you know, Riddler wannabes, and we're going to have this sequence, but that sequence is over now, and now it's this rescue sequence, and you're like, okay, I'm really confused of the tone. It just they lost that. They went through so much trouble to make Gotham a character. It was so cool and dark. It was great because it didn't feel like New York or Chicago. It could have felt like, a Tokyo, or it could have felt like an amalgam of these big cities. It felt wet all the time because it rains a lot. I was good with all of that. And then we just lost it. Suddenly we're like at the Madison Square Garden, and that was it. We lost the element of Gotham writ large.
Yeah, that's a great point. That's one of the things I loved about the movie, really, as like Gotham City as a character. And as you said, it really was unique, wasn't it? It did look like its own version of Gotham. It wasn't New York, it wasn't London or wherever. It was an amalgamation of the different cities, and then straight from the comic books. And going back to what you said about the detective side of it, yeah, I loved that. I loved the dynamic between Gordon and Batman. And I gotta say, forget about Bruce Wayne, but Robert Pattinson as Batman, I thought he played it really well. Yeah, he's a young Batman, but you got a real sense of like an alienness to him. Do you know what I mean? The way he was looking at and interacting with people, just lots of staring, not much talking. I thought that was great. There was a real separation between this guy and like the police or the regular.
Yeah, and I think that there's something to be said about, and they called it Year 2 Batman, which I actually think I can live with, right? So he doesn't quite know what he's gotten himself into. He's kind of in over his head at times. Obviously, he's very inexperienced. I was willing to even go along with proto Batsuit, proto Batmobile. The scene where he's using the cape and he's kind of parachuting down and he crashes. It was. I really wish it hadn't been quite as extreme as they were going for, but it still works for an inexperienced Batman.
Yeah, but what do you reckon? That would have killed him, wouldn't it? Really, the way they exaggerated that landing. Yeah, man, it was good and inexperienced, but yeah, it was a bit crazy.
Yeah, I think that if we have a time jump for a second film, and he's now like Year 5 Batman. So you see major upgrades to the suit, a new Batmobile. You see him not making some of those mistakes, even if he jokes about it. Like, yeah, I've done that before. He's like, he can have little jokes, but we've got to see a Robin in this universe, or we're just going to have a hard time with our suspension of disbelief. Like the guy that can just walk through a police station or into a nightclub and not be this mystical creature almost in the comic books. It just wouldn't. It's just not gonna hold together. It's like it's great for a Year 2. I don't think it has the legs to be Batman for a length of time without bringing in the Robin element, because the Robin element is so important for that sort of like disbelief of having a partner and a distraction and things like that.
Okay, that's interesting. Yeah, I wondered what you might think about the Robin element, whether to have a Robin in or not. With it being early, with it being Year 2, you wonder, don't you, how long they would leave it before they would bring one in, and I don't know what your thoughts are. I mean, we can talk about previous Batman movies later, but I don't think they've done a good Robin on screen yet. No, what do you think?
We've never even tried. So I think I like the movie as a whole. I agree with Pattinson. I would say that he wasn't Bruce Wayne. And the only reason it saves it for me is because at least you have Alfred talking to him in that one early scene where he's like, no, you have got to get your finances in order. You have to take this part of it seriously, whatever. Again, Year 5 Batman, he's now playing the Playboy game. He's now pretending. We saw this done perfectly in the Nolan films, right? So that he was pretending to be Bruce Wayne. He wanted to be Batman. And that struggle and that dichotomy was done well. They could easily evolve the Pattinson version into that. I'm not sure Pattinson wants to do that, but that is he could pull it off so well, especially because he's such, the women just love this guy. So to have these scenes where, treating Bruce Wayne as the celebrity that they're all trying to bag just is almost like a spoon-fed option here. That's just so easy to pull off. And then of course you have the Wayne Manor board meetings and whatever. So
Yeah.
I was along for the ride with that part of it as well, but that would be my critique. And you're nodding, so I assume we're in agreement pretty much with all of that.
It was interesting, wasn't it? You wonder whether that was the choice for, like you say, Paddison, or whether it was the writer, director that. The first time I saw it, I didn't like his Bruce Wayne at all. But then the second time, I was looking at it from a different angle. Someone told me to see it as you just said, that he doesn't want to be. He's fighting against being that. He just got no interest in being that. Bruce Wayne, that persona. He just wants to focus on vengeance and being Batman. So I like that a little bit better. Yeah, the second time.
Yeah, I'm okay with all of that. I was reasonably okay with you were praising his dynamic with Gordon. I thought Gordon was sold a little short as far as actually being. He's basically just kind of falling around and things like that. I wish there was a little bit more. There's a couple scenes where I think he could have been firing his gun and doing some police stuff and fighting or doing something. It would have been a little more involved. But again, year two, not going to totally throw the baby out with the bathwater here. I didn't like the scene where he's walking through the building to the crime scene past the police, and there's all this animosity with the police. It was okay, so I have to go back to I just recently watched one of the animated shows on the WB.
Okay.
It's like a Batman Superman Apocalypse, I think is which one it was. Anyway, there's all these great shots in the show where Batman's just in the room and he stands in the corner and it's just a silhouette of the bat with the cape. Batman should have just already been in the room, like clean. They should have been like clean out this crime scene or whatever, and then he just steps out from the shadow or something. Or it isn't terrible. It didn't ruin that first part for me. I just wish as we move forward that we stop focusing on a lot of that and get more into how mysterious he is. You know what I mean? The cop should arrest this guy. So yeah, it was okay. There's good and bads with some of that.
Yeah, me too. I agree. I didn't like the way they showed that relationship with the police, and they were just they couldn't stand him, could they? Well, you can understand that, but as you say, that's a good point. The fact that you've got him walking, into the building, walking past them all, it does ruin any kind of like mystery or surprise when he does appear. I think the Nolan films did that pretty well, didn't they? I think Pops, you were talking about that in your video, your analysis of the movie. The way they had him suddenly appear, or Gordon would empty the room, wouldn't he? Gordon like, okay, everybody out, and then he'd just talk with him and they'd go through it. But it was weird. I wonder if they did that to show off that new kind of technology they had, where he's got the contacts in, he's filming everything. So they were showing him, had to show him walking around the room, coming in, whatever. Maybe it was for that.
Yeah, I love it. I love that element of it too, the inexperienced Batman element, and yet at the same time bringing us something completely new, right? So here's this young kid. He doesn't quite know what he's gotten himself into, but he has this tech. He doesn't even have a really cool Batcave yet, but he has some cool tech. That was all good. That was all great. Let's see. The Riddler itself is just not the Riddler. It was a fine serial killer, Zodiac killer. I mean, it's obviously a Zodiac killer. I don't know. I know a lot of people have fan theories on this villain would have been better or not. It's not going to happen. The studio has to have a big name villain. That's just the way the marketing has to work. It just got tedious for me a little bit because it was just not Riddler. Once the mask comes off and it's just the Paul Dano, it's like a great effort thing, but nothing's really working for me. It's just not an intimidating dude, and he didn't seem crazy enough. It was like it's okay. I'm not gonna, like I said, not throwing baby out with the bathwater. I'm fine, and it can be proto Riddler. So maybe Riddler's in Arkham Asylum in a later film, or he gets released or something, and he's a different version of his former self. I can live with that. So that was my thought on Riddler.
Would you have preferred a more Jim Carrey-esque take to it, like
I don't
Batman
hate the Jim Carrey
Forever?
version as much.
Really?
My problem with the Jim Carrey. Well, actually, first off, let's say the Jim Carrey. Well, let's talk about that movie later.
Sure.
I'll tease and say I don't hate it as much as other people do, or probably as much as I should. I'll say it that way.
Okay. Yeah, no one. I get what you're saying. They did go for more of like a Seven or Zodiac killer theme, didn't they, with the Riddler? And it wasn't the Riddler from the comics, not at all. But I did quite like him to start with until, as you say, until he took the mask off, until you saw him losing his cool, his control, and just like screaming and shouting. That's not the Riddler. He's supposed to be very kind of logical, isn't he? Well, very logical. He can work things out so well. He's like 2 moves ahead of you the whole time. But you didn't get that feeling with Paul Dano's take. It's just he's like crazy serial killer-esque. You know, what's the word they say? I can't remember the word. Someone who lives on their own in a basement, streaming all the time.
Yeah, he's the recluse, and
basically a recluse who's got terrible social skills.
Yeah, and it really would have worked well if, like I said, this is why the Hush thing. If you're not a huge fan of the comic, you don't understand how easy this would be for him to just be more maniacal and, like a chess player. Like, yeah, you got me. Why do you think I would turn myself in? You're so silly. You're not as smart as I thought you were. There's someone, you don't think I'm the only one in charge. And like, it was so, it's like the softball was queued up for them to have this transition from the Riddler was not the real villain all along. And they just did not go there. It was so weird. I still, to this day, I think it's one of the biggest problems with the whole film.
I didn't get that choice. Did you, Pops? Like, why did he let himself get caught? It was a nice visual scene, yeah.
Beautiful.
But it's like, no.
Sure, cool. Makes for some good trailer footage, but
yeah.
It only would make sense if there's something else more. And
yeah,
if they cut it out and there's more we didn't see or know, then shame on them. That takes us, I guess, to proto Catwoman, right? So Zoe Kravitz, she plays a knight. There are tons of Catwoman examples that were lifted for this, and I know people are critical of like the knitted hat, the knitted mask, and her basically wearing leather. All of that, I got to be honest, worked for me. She was still pretty good. She's Selena Kyle. She's not really Catwoman. I wish she would have been transitioning more into that. Like, there's a shot where she's there talking to him or whatever, and then when she shows up, I think she should just be like, he should be like comment like, I got you a new mask or something. Just something about. So you can protect your head. You can do that. I mean, something. It just seemed like there was no evolution of her costume or her character in that regard. But she was fine. She was pretty. Her performance was fine. Definitely can't criticize her in that regard.
Oh, me too. I really liked her. I liked her. Where you first see her in the club was it the Iceberg Lounge?
Yes,
which is a great. Hats off to the comics again. I really liked her. Yeah, that knit cap thing she's not being Catwoman, is she? She's just trying to disguise herself. So she just grabbed whatever was easiest to use, I guess. She's not thought about making a costume. But yeah, that's a good point. Imagine if Batman had like given her this, try this. This is really good.
Yeah, and then her lines, the white privilege line, and some of the anti-rich lines and things like that. Man, you talk about something that doesn't work in a film. Like, you're talking to a rich white guy. Because she may not know who he is. You can clearly see that he's a white guy. Dude obviously has some cash when he has some cool gadgets and crap attached to his suit standing in front of you. So you're doing all of this to the person that you know. I mean, it just, as an audience person, you cringe on multiple levels. You cringe because you're getting political in the middle of this movie and it doesn't fit the tone of the movie. And then there's also the suspension of disbelief. It's like me talking to you, Gray, and going, I just can't stand these white guys in Japan. It just really irks me off, right? Don't you feel that way? And you're like, what is wrong with you? Like, what? Yeah, it was that kind of moment. And I know that's one that I only bring it up because I know so many people have that as a linchpin of problems with the film.
Like everywhere, pretty much, Japan is controlled by old white guys.
You're in charge. It's
how about this, Pops?
Systemic white privilege in Japan.
Can I play devil's advocate? Because first of all, I agree. When she said that line, it was like alarms were going off. It was wasn't it so obvious, and it just pulls you out of the film. But to be fair, like, think of it from her perspective. She believes her father is Falcone. He's like a gangster, yeah, but he's a rich old white guy. And she's been spending time in the club, the Iceberg Lounge, which is basically filled with rich, middle-aged, elderly white guys who do run the city. So without the current climate, without what it kind of signifies, maybe it wouldn't have been too bad. But yeah, it did kind of like go,
that is so true, because I actually just, oh man, it's escaping me now. I usually am consuming a movie or two, a TV show or two, whatever, at the same time. So I actually could, it'll probably click. I know I'd recently rewatched Alien vs. Predator, and in 2022 eyes, it can be woke because there's strong female characters. There's a female soldier that's like dispatched quickly, so it didn't really have a purpose. There's a few most, but it's not woke because she's not, superpower Mary Sue. But I saw another film like that where, like, you're right, in 2022 it feels a little different. If it was in a different time, we probably wouldn't blink to this. We actually probably would give the film a lot more credit for having some grounding in the real world and tying the real world corporate cronyism into their film. But in 2022, it's almost like a red flag of like, how political or how biased are you going here? But I'll say, and I've said, defended the film, it does not derail the film. We don't suddenly end up into some sort of weird, cringy, 2022 film from that point. That's definitely not the problem with the film. It's not because of that line or that moment.
No, that's right. And again, going back to it, the Riddler's targets, he was targeting those people, wasn't he? He was targeting corruption, and they just happened to be people who were like middle-aged and usually white. So, yeah, I don't know. Initially, when I first saw it did kind of annoy me, and I heard the reaction, watch YouTube like you, and most people were saying, oh, they've put that in deliberately, but it didn't ruin the film for me. But don't forget, people out there and Pops, I am very biased because I love Batman. I'm just so happy to see, Batman on screen done well, in my opinion. So I give the film a lot of leeway because of that. Yeah, I'm biased.
Colin Farrell's Oz Penguin is a fantastic proto Penguin. I always try to tell people, I says my favorite Penguin comic books are the ones where he is not slinging an umbrella and having a sword pop out of it. He is a crime lord in a club somewhere that Batman can't pin it on him. Batman's frustrated because he can't pin. He knows the Penguin's involved. He's got nothing. He's got nothing that will stick. And they set that version of Penguin up. He's like an underboss in this. He's going to rise to power now. It was like a perfect setup. And kudos to Graham Nolan, I believe, is the artist who's done a lot of the work where a lot of that Penguin design came from. So,
oh, really?
Yeah, a lot of the comic books that Graham worked on are the ones that kind of gave you more of that sort of mobster look, ditching some of the tuxedo stuff, the iceberg lounge look. Some of that comes from a lot more of Graham Nolan's work than I'm sure there are others. I'm not going to try to. If I'm ignoring an artist, I do apologize. Put it in the comments and correct me when you see this. But I love the proto Penguin. That's what I call all of this is to me proto stuff because it's designed to have more Batman stories behind it. And if it never comes to fruition, shame on them because they actually went through so much trouble to make something decent that was at least a good foundation to build from. It's not perfect, but it's something good to build from.
Yeah, again, I have to say I agree absolutely. He was one of the highlights of the movie for me. But how about this, Pops? One of the interesting points I heard from somebody else, they were saying, okay, we know he's brilliant, Colin Farrell is great in this part and it's a great performance, but why did they, use him and just cover him in all that makeup and fat suit, prosthetics, so they could have chosen anybody, or they didn't have to, cover the guy up so much. Is it because they knew he could give that performance? Was there no other actor who could deliver like that? Because I'm not saying it wasn't good, it was brilliant. I loved him in it, but do you know what I mean?
I think I saw an interview or one of their press junkets, and Colin Farrell says that's why he wanted to do the role. That's what locked him in. He wanted the challenge of doing that. He wanted the challenge of the transformation, being the gangster, having that sort of Al Capone element in there. He wanted that. So for him, that's kind of what he was going for. And yeah, I don't know. It's a chicken and egg thing because it sounds like that was the version they wanted. It sounds like they wanted to move towards more like Emperor Penguin and, Iceberg Lounge, Mafia Boss and some of that. Because I do say that this is one of my biggest criticisms of the Marvel Universe is they have these very talented, dramatic actors come in, play a character, play a villain, and basically could have had anybody. They could have had this. Just we've wasted talent in Hollywood for that. So. Let's get to this third act situation where, after visiting the Riddler, everything sort of changes. I don't know what worked for you. It's a very tough feeling for me. Like, I don't hate the detective stuff, getting into the apartment, unearthing all of that. It's just like suddenly the Riddler has this. He's been all logical and systematic in murdering people when now suddenly there are vans full of explosives and it's like, well, now suddenly everyone's at risk. It was just this weird shift with no transition or motive. It totally doesn't work for me.
Okay, yeah, interesting. I don't know. I'm still trying to get my head around it because it felt like almost like another movie. Like part two, or something they tacked on. I don't know. What did you think about as we say, like why did they let the Riddler give himself up? Was that so Batman would have to go to Arkham and then supposedly maybe have a chance to meet the Joker, which they actually didn't use in the end, that deleted scene. So I just don't get that decision. That should have been the climax, shouldn't it? Like the Batman finds or somehow gets the Riddler and they have some kind of fight or whatever.
Yeah, like I said, the idea there's not another player involved. Suddenly the Riddler has been systematically murdering these corrupt political or powerful figures is suddenly going to shift, blow up exits from around the city, flood the city, put every other citizen at risk. All of this just went off the deep end into like it's almost like a Joker storyline. Even that's really not even radical enough for the Joker unless there was poison in the water or maybe Scarecrow or something. But the fact that it wasn't, it just doesn't make any sense. And then you package that with the only thing that's really carrying on at this point is sort of like the other mayor, the new mayor story, which are obviously parallels to Barack Obama, and all of her messaging is like all of her message and all of her dialogue from a political standpoint are all completely ripped right out of his legacy, and you're just kind of it's a very disconjointed sort of film. Like I just this whole last third act, that's to me why it just doesn't work.
Do you know the storyline from the comic books Cataclysm? When there's a huge earthquake hits Gotham, and I think that's what they seem to be trying to put in for some reason, or is it No Man's Land as well? Like when you had the flooding.
Yeah, Cataclysm sets up No Man's Land. I can see them going for a No Man's Land story, but it was like contrived by Riddler. It was, I don't know.
Yeah,
really
why
weird.
tack it on the end of this movie, which was just mainly to be about the Riddler and Batman? It was a weird decision. And what did you think about towards the end where they're trying to show a more hopeful Batman, weren't they? He's trying to save people instead of just being vengeance, being this like this force for vengeance. He's offering hope at the end.
Well, he becomes Superman, right? So it's almost like a Superman mantra of swoop in. Now, first off, you're going to see him, right? So he's totally exposed. He's just a regular guy. First off, I hated all of that. There's a certain element to that can be argued as well. Like even with the police station and stuff earlier in the film and whatever. It's like once you see him and you see, oh, well, he's 6'2" or he's 6'4" or whatever. He's a white guy. He's only so big. He weighs, 220, 225. So now you have like, the thug that's 6'7" that weighs 300 pounds. I mean, so you start to lose some of the mystery around Batman because he's still like a regular guy in there. Superman can just be Superman because he's pretty much invincible except for one or two little things. So the idea that he is a beacon of hope and some of that, and I hated this analogy, but I couldn't get my head around anything other than he's like a firefighter. He's like showing up doing the disaster relief at this point. I know he stops the crisis, but the shot I think it's from a helicopter, right? So he's all dirty, but it's during the daylight and you see him and you're like, that is not a Batman shot. That is not a good idea. That would not be the thing. And he's still a vigilante. Some people can cheer for him because he saved everybody at the Madison Square Garden, but it's not the right tone and stuff for Batman at all. I really didn't care for that at all.
No, that's a fair point. Yeah, me too. It was strange. I saw some people again arguing that no, it was good to have that because you went from the darkness all the way through. It was very serious, very dark. And then you had this moment of hope at the end. So, but I think that was added on. That's why the running time just got ridiculously longer and longer.
Yeah, because
they put it on as an afterthought.
It seems like the montage at Avengers is kind of what they were going for. Remember they have the Avengers New York thing. And the public doesn't know what to think of it all, but then there's suddenly this montage of all these citizens that were saved, and they're like, "Captain America saved my life," and oh, so and so did this. It's like it would have been easy to have the montage of the Gotham chaos, and they got like, and you could have easily just had somebody on the ground who would have been like, talking about the kid that was saved, and oh, we did this, it's like, it was the Batman that saved me. It's the Batman, but we didn't have another villain, we didn't have anything else, so it's just now we've just. For some reason, the Riddler did this. leaves Gotham is a mess. It's no man's land, and Batman's basically now exposed that everyone's had a little dose of who and what he is, and that's kind of where the film ends. And it is very, very awkward. Is the best I can go with. I really didn't like it, but it's it was terrible. I'm sorry, I can't I just really hate the end of this movie. Like it doesn't work at all. The first part of the movie works great and sets up a whole lot of cool stuff for a universe.
So did you say you've seen it a second time now on HBO? Yeah, okay. So you haven't changed. Can I ask you one thing going back to the movie? One thing that they changed from the canon. What did you think about the backstory with Thomas Wayne and Martha Wayne and what they did with her character? Suggesting that she had problems and she had to be, institutionalized. That's the word, isn't it?
Yeah, and I'm. It's a tough call for me because I tend to be a traditionalist and I tend to be more like, let's just stick with the canon because it works. I will say though, this change and having some of that, it almost exposes the Wayne family with a different type of legacy. And I think the Gotham TV series kind of went for this a little bit. And I kind of alluded to this because I said it could set up the Court of Owls. Like it could set up the fact that you have a little bit of this sets up a deeper and a wider range for stuff that you can pull from for future films and future characters and stuff. So I'm not as I sound like a hypocrite because normally I'd be totally hung up on that kind of change. But for this situation, I didn't have a major objection to it. And again, it set up Hush. Like it was like a name drop in there that even though we're going to make some changes, we do this name drop, but there's no payoff. And I really don't understand. I feel like there was a script change and Hush was the villain and there was this other action sequence. And then the studio notes came in and said, no, we can't do that. Take this out. And we're not going to sell action figures with a guy with his face covered up. We're not doing it. Like that's freaking how I feel like this went. And that person at Warner Brothers, you should be fired. Just so you know. Completely clear. If you haven't already been fired, you should be fired because you're a problem. So.
It would have been so cool, you didn't have to show him, just set it up, set it up more. So you got a future story involving Hush, that's coming. But anyway.
You mentioned the deleted Joker scene and stuff, just the idea of having the Joker and all that. Do you have any thoughts on all of that, or what were your impressions?
Apart from the look of it, which I didn't like, I thought it was quite good. The idea of having him already locked up in Arkham Asylum, and you didn't see any of that. I like that side of it. Like Batman's already had dealings with him, or maybe it wasn't even Batman. Maybe the police caught him and put him in there. But I'm glad they didn't show it. It would have made him look weaker. Like people have said, why would he go and ask the Joker for his advice? That's crazy. He's asking a crazy person. So, how about you? What was your take?
Yeah. I actually would have included the scene. If I could re-edit it, I would include the scene in the middle. So instead of him getting knocked out with the bomb neck scene, I would have some sort of way where maybe he uses his cape or he finds a way to go through the explosion and then just disappear.
Yeah.
And then go to Arkham. But it would be the motivation of going to Arkham is the line about it's our anniversary. Like Batman's mentally ill, just like the Joker is. Batman's going to pay homage and Batman's going to check on him and make sure he's flipping still there, which is really what he would do in the comic book. He would show up on the anniversary to make sure he's still there and he's as insane as he ever was. Joker would mess with him. Instead of him asking for his advice, Joker would be more like, I hear you have trouble again out there. I like this guy. I like what he's doing to you. Those kinds of things. And that would be it. It's like he's still there. He's Joker's in. It would easily, you could throw a couple more villains into that scene as like little teasers or little Easter eggs. But yeah, I don't care for the look. I won't rule anything out because obviously the Heath Ledger stuff took us all by storm when it happened. So I'm not totally, but I'm just kind of sick of having Joker as this main thing. But if like I said, if we had it the way I just kind of spelled it out, I think it would have been a cool thing to kind of have. It gives you some of the trailer misdirection because you can have footage from that to make people think Joker's in it. But yeah, anyway. What else? I think that's kind of the overall feel. We covered most of the positives and the negatives. It kind of lands in around a 7 for me. I go to the IMDb 10-point scale thing. It's like it easily should have been an 8.5 kind of thing. It should have been a lot higher. But that third act is just an anchor around its neck.
Yeah, Yeah, I agree. That the first half maybe was like an 8.5, like you say, almost a 9 with my bias for the
Mm.
character, but it ended up being like yeah, 7, about 7 out of 10.
Yeah,
But that's still good for me. I love
sure.
the character. I love the look. You mentioned in your review video how much you enjoyed the music, the soundtrack, especially
Yes.
in the first half. How good was that? It's a great
It's
simple
still,
theme.
yeah, the scene of him coming out, like I said, it's kind of weird. He just walks out. So that
Yeah.
wasn't really Batman-esque. But I will say year two Batman would do that. Year two Batman would be kind of dumb enough to think that he could still do some of this. Like he's been experimenting with some of this. I can
Mm.
see him doing that because he doesn't have respect for these lowly thugs in a subway. Like, so I got all that. But that music is just great. It's great. And I have to admit, even the Nirvana remix and some of that, it's like Marvel still thinks it's doing this right. And you can see it in some of their trailers and stuff. And you're just like, yeah, Marvel, you're not doing this right anymore. You're just like stealing something from our past, sticking it in your movie and making us nod along. And maybe that works for a lot of folks, but I'm just so over that part of it. This worked really good for me.
Yeah, very great. Well, very good theme, very catchy. Everyone was like humming it, weren't they, after we were watching the movie? It really
Oh, you
gets in
still
your
do,
head.
right? You still do. I don't know
Yeah,
about you because I can't wait for you to see it again because
yeah,
watching it just in the last couple of days, that doom, 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 it's right there in your head. I mean, it's literally like the Vader march.
yeah,
It's so
yeah.
good. It
So
really really is. I'm shocked there's not more memes and remixes because it's just that good of just different little Batman. I would love to almost see some 80 Batman 89 stuff done with some of that. Just like remix a couple little clips or something like that and get a little Batman theme like that and see if we can make it work. I think I could find some footage to make it work. So. What else do you want to say about the film? Anything else you can think of? I think the performances were really, really solid. I think people that are bagging on the performances are really misguided.
yeah, yeah, me
Um,
too. I loved. Did you like his narration? His almost like taxi driver esque narration at the beginning. When
especially
Batman,
in the
when Robert
beginning.
Pattinson's talking, and that the theme is slowly building up, and he's showing Gotham. It's an incredible opening. Maybe that's why we kind of felt a bit disappointed at the end. Because what a
Well,
way
yeah,
to
because we
open.
lost all of that. And I said,
Yeah,
and you know what, you're right, because I didn't even think of this. Man, why did we lose the narration? Him keeping a journal and narrating during some of the
yeah,
rest of the film, and then the fact that there could be another villain, Thomas Elliot. Uh, what happened to we kind of skipped through Alfred. There's just not enough of Alfred. I don't want to. I
Hmm.
can praise Andy Serkis. The only thing about Alfred that can be said is there's not enough Alfred. Like it just comes and goes in a couple fleeting moments. Some kind of work, some don't.
Yeah.
Um, but man, if he had kind of kept it, it's almost like a movie version of his diary was the take on this movie.
Hmm.
That could have easily
Yeah.
have worked and saved some of this, and not have us feel like we just got sucked into mindless action for no reason. Like it doesn't make any sense. Like it's so disconnected, folks. I know if you haven't seen it, now it's on HBO Max. A whole bunch of people will want to go see it. That's why I thought doing another video would be important. Is for those of you that feel the way we feel, you're going, at least I'm not alone, because that's how I felt when I've seen other YouTubers do videos.
I've almost heard people say, just switch off the movie when you see Riddler give himself up in the cafe, in the diner. Just switch it off then. Okay, it's finished. That's it. Don't watch anymore. It's fine.
Yeah,
So,
I'm lucky that I'm not like some real gifted editor slash animator. I would almost animate a scene of Hush and put this stuff in, and that
yeah,
would be
drop
the end
that
of my.
in.
It's almost like a movie, or there'd be an outtake of him visiting the Riddler in Arkham, and it would be about the other guy. He doesn't know who the other guy is, and then you see the journals, and you see all this stuff, and it kind of closes. If the closing of the journal and the closing of the movie are the same, like that would make for a much better movie. Now, let me ask you about this. I have more like small grandkids now, so it's not quite as applicable. But having kids, this movie is not the greatest kid friendly film,
Oh
and
God, no!
definitely
You
would be
would.
bored out of their freaking minds.
No, no, yeah, so boring for them. So too dark. They don't know what's
Yeah.
going on, and quite disturbing in the beginning with the opening scene. The Riddler scene where he's taping the guy, and oh yeah, yeah. I would not take any child, under like 13, 14 to see
hmm
that.
And there's someone who said this, and I'm having a hard time with it because I can actually see both sides of this. And it's like, if you've made a Batman movie in theaters and kids can't go see it, you've done something wrong. And that really punched me in the gut because I liked that element of the movie, and that was like, it's like what I want. And then I'm like, man, that is true, because if I'm not selling Batman to kids, and I'm getting them to go buy some toys and comic books, I'm not doing my job. But then I'm like, yeah, but so many of the comic books are not for little kids. But it's like,
No.
I'm trapped. I'm trapped. I feel like I'm trapped in a perfect. I'm literally, I feel like I'm in a trap. So that's my question for any of you that get a chance to see Frank Miller, because he's going to be at a couple of the shows. I'm not going to be able to see him every time. I think I'm going to, either he gets canceled or I do. I want to ask him about that balance of how you create content that isn't digestible for some of the target audience. Like, how does that transition go? I don't think he gives a rat's behind, but I would love to see kind of, because he's in a different level. So, anything else you want to say about the Batman?
What you just said then about the children angle, you could argue that the Nolan movies were not really suitable, were they, for children, especially The Dark Knight and Dark Knight Rises. You know, you're going back to, well, even the second Burton one, especially the second Burton movie, which, by the way, I love. I've got to say that I love. It's a different kind of movie. It's not really a Batman movie. It's more like a kind of gothic fairy tale, a twisted Burton, mindscape of a movie. But I do love it.
Saying all of this, let's kind of figure out how it fits against a lot of the other movies.
Yeah.
And let's just stick with, the four original films: Batman, Batman Returns, Batman Forever, Batman and Robin, and then the 3 Nolan films, and then this one. So that'd be 8, right? Let's just stick with those. Stick with those 8. We don't want to include some of the animated, because there's been a lot of other stuff, but let's just stick with the 8. I think we can both agree Batman and Robin isn't even worth our time to talk about. Like, it's just Batman and Robin is this epitome of bad on so many levels.
It's so bad it's good in the end. So bad it's actually turned out to be good.
No. Neither
Come
is
on, man.
Catwoman.
Arnie
Neither is the Catwoman movie. It's so funny, when I saw Catwoman, I saw it in the theater. And
really? I haven't even seen it yet. I've never watched it.
I came out in the theater, and I was with my friends, and they looked at me, and they're like, "Oh, and I says, there are no other black people in this movie. How do they not know she's Catwoman? This is the dumbest thing I've ever seen.
Oh, really? As I say, I haven't seen it.
It's
so bad.
Halle Berry. Halle Berry is beautiful. Obviously, it's a bit of the race swapping for a Catwoman or whatever, and it's never really brought up. But I'm like, I was immediately disconnected of. No one's going to believe. It would be like making a Batman movie, and it took place in Japan, and he's the only 6'4" white guy in the city. It's like this giant 6'4" guy walking around, and then Batman shows. And I wonder who Batman could be. That's how Catwoman. It was just, there's such, as I said, it can break. Oh man, I forget the word. It's like it just breaks your barrier of what can be true, and that's how that was. So, Batman '89. You praised Batman Returns, Batman Forever. So let's go through those. We kind of are similar in age. So for us, Batman '89 just rocked my world. It was just the thing. And my friends were into comic books. I did comic books as a little kid. I immediately went out and I bought trade paperbacks of Year One, Dark Knight Returns, Killing Joke. I loved it so much. I was hooked. I went back. I went to this little place in a mall called Walden Books, which we don't even have anymore. And I bought all these trade paperbacks. And then I bought Frank Miller's Electro Assassin, Christ Under. Yeah.
I read that recently, actually. Frank Miller's.
There he is.
Electro.
There's the one. I did a whole video, and that's the book that got me into comics. And I went through some of the panels and some of the greatness that still holds up to this day.
I wish I'd been buying the individual issues. I don't think I could afford them when they were coming out. I was just buying the regular Batman title. So I wish I had, the 4 parts of this.
Ooh, anyway. Yeah, I wish I could tell you I didn't, but yes, I do. I'm debating whether or not. I'm debating whether or not I should get my #1 graded, so it's sort of like sealed and preserved. It's sort of like everything has its price, and it can easily. So this is my thing. Everything can be replaced. You can see some of my stuff behind me on the shelf there. I went and got a Pit #1. It's perfect, and Pit #1's by Dale Keown, and that was a comic book that I just thought.
Dale Keown, yeah, he used to
knock my socks
off. Hulk, didn't he? He was one of the Hulk's best artists.
So I was hooked. I was done. I was hooked. I was all in. That movie changed everything, because then I'm down this whole rabbit hole of this element of art and storytelling. Frank Miller, Alan Moore. I was just down the rabbit hole. Just boom, instantly. So
Can I ask, Pops,
movie
what
was
was
great.
it? What was it that really, that blew
It
your
felt
mind or
real.
blew you away?
It felt real.
Really?
It felt real because he was he was always my most accessible character because it was just the fantasy of, I don't know, every I think all guys and kids and whatever we fantasize about being a superhero or being the guy fight for justice and doing different things. And you can fight about different things. I think as you get older, like I am, I fantasize more about being Superman than I would a Batman. Like I'd rather be more invincible and be able to do these really cool things that Superman can do. But Batman was like just a regular dude with a cool
Yeah.
suit and gadgets, trying to do right, avenge his parents, and all of that. It was so accessible. I don't know. I don't know how to put up my finger on that. I will say, with no irony, it was Daredevil. That was my big thing in the Marvel side. I was really hooked on. Frank Miller did Daredevil, so now I'm down the rabbit hole
Oh,
of.
mate, me
and then-
too.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and then
me too.
Ann Vicente picks up the ball, and in some ways, I can argue that some of her stuff is better than his. It was just so good.
I think so too,
yeah.
Pops. I just missed when I started buying Daredevil. I just missed Frank Miller's run, and it was Ann Nocenti, but I didn't know, about Frank Miller back then. How good was Ann Nocenti's run? In my memory, it was very, very good.
So good. It is so
Yeah.
good.
Yeah,
She is probably a creator, probably the most underrated creator. She's definitely one of like 5 of the most underrated creators.
underrated. Yeah,
Like you just don't think of her on this level with Grant Morrison's and Alan Moore's and Miller's and some of these folks. And she just created. And I wish she had just had more influence in other titles and other runs, other characters, because she just did so much great stuff. Yeah, that's how I ended up down that rabbit hole, and I guess that's what it was. And then then there's overlap with my childhood. So I had to go back and I had to buy Avengers 181, which is this sort of collage issue where they have all of these characters on the cover. I don't know who half these characters are, and they have to pick a team down to 7. And that's where I was. As a kid, that was the issue I started with, and I used to pretend that issue because it was like I play with all my action figures and all this other kind of stuff. So then I ended up down the rabbit hole of the Avengers run. I kind of built my Avengers run, kind of started from there and went forward, and then I went backwards so I could understand who all these different characters were and things like that. So I had this massive Daredevil, Batman, and Avengers collection. That was pretty much how most of my stuff was. And then one of my closest friends was an X-Men guy. So that's how it all started for me. But yeah, Batman 89 is where it all started. Nicholson, Keaton pulled it off. The music, the Prince stuff. It just consumed society. I was reminded of Star Wars all over again because it was like a phenomenon with Batman.
it was, and people who weren't around at that time, they won't know about that. But as you say, the excitement, the build up, the anticipation, the press, the publicity for it was everywhere. I've got this memory of I'm from the UK originally, and it was Wimbledon time, the Wimbledon tournament, the tennis tournament, and people were wearing like Batman t-shirts, to promote the movie before it came out, and they were getting like removed from Wimbledon, like you can't come in wearing that because it was to promote the movie. It was everywhere, wasn't it? And it was so huge.
Yeah, and it was just different, right? So the only Batman, the only Batman incarnation we had was Adam West, which was fun and campy, lighthearted. This had a black suit with that bright yellow logo. He had this really strange looking car, and then Nicholson. So yeah, it's hard to not have a special bias for the '89 film, and I have to admit that to some folks. Sometimes you like things for the wrong reasons. That's my catchphrase for that. Sometimes you can like things for the wrong reasons, which means nothing more than look. I can evaluate it as a film, but I have a special bonus. It gets special bonus points because of, and then fill in the blanks. Like you can have different memories or experiences that make it better. It could be a movie I saw with my dad, or it could be fair enough. So,
for sure.
You praised Batman Returns. Talk a little bit more about that because your take on that's actually a little different than mine, and pretty cool that you think of it as more like just a Burton fairy tale story.
Yeah. Thanks. As I said, I like you. I love the original one. Batman 89. I came into that after a couple of years of reading the comics, so for me, like you said, there was only the Adam West before that, and I was so excited to be seeing it on the big screen. When we heard it was going to be a huge production. Tim Burton was very successful at the time, but yeah, the sequel, I think I've appreciated that more as I've got older. When I first saw it, it was like kind of, whoa, what's going on? This is dark. This is really dark, a bit grotesque at times. What did you think of Danny DeVito's take on Oswald Cobblepot, the Penguin?
Yeah, Uh,
Didn't like.
well, so I've rewatched it, and I realized there's a whole lot of Batman not being Batman in this movie. He just drives up to town, does some stuff, and then suddenly he's somewhere else. So I never really got some of the grandiose, like there's not a lot of sky shots or anything like that, like there was in the first film. DeVito's Penguin and the penguin missile strapped to penguins and the grotesqueness at the end is what I was put off by. Like it was. I think I don't know. I really struggle because I do enjoy it, but I don't like it. It's like when it's a very difficult thing. Like I don't. I can appreciate DeVito. He did an amazing job transforming into this character, this weird, quirky penguin-esque character. And it's fine that you have the carnival theme and you have the weird penguin missile plan. Yeah, it doesn't really quite work for me as well.
No,
Because
I get
to
what
me,
you're saying.
it's showcasing this great conflict in Bruce Wayne / Batman with Selena Kyle / Catwoman, which is not ever enough could be said about Michelle Pfeiffer as Catwoman in this film. It's so freaking amazing. It's so awesome.
I think that's why I love it. It's mainly for those two you just said, for Batman and Catwoman, their dynamic and their performances in that. I didn't like Chris Walken, who I love. Yeah, Christopher Walken. I didn't like Matt Schreck, that character at all. You know, when I first watched that, as I say, when I was younger, it was a bit of a wasn't sure. Didn't like Penguin, didn't like him, but I loved Batman and Catwoman. So, as I say, I don't know why. Maybe it's an age thing. I've just appreciated it more as I've got older. Yeah. Definitely. What do you think about they had Batman basically killing people in that movie? You know,
that movie was different.
It's violent, isn't it?
Yeah, it was tough
and sexy as well.
And that part was okay. A lot of that was very interesting because it walks a little bit of the edge of real life and stuff like that. Got a lot edgier.
Yeah.
But like I said, just the grand nature of Batman being on ledges of buildings and the light in the sky and some of that kind of stuff kind of got lost a little bit in that film for me. And I can totally understand, folks, if you don't understand the failure of the film doesn't set up that he has cool toys or cool gadgets, cool versions of his suit or anything like that. So they just made stuff up. So toys didn't sell because he's not in a suit of armor. But boy, they sure had a toy that he was. And, it was just like these random toys where you're like, what is this? So little kids were like, this has nothing to do with the movie. I don't want to buy an action figure set of just penguins. This is not the penguin. Just literally there was an action figure set of
really?
penguins.
I didn't get into the toys, so I don't know.
But this is part of the reason that, the film, they didn't want to do another Burton film. They didn't want to stay down that road because it wasn't even remotely, they weren't able to capitalize on any of the merchandising that they were, because the first film was like a phenomenon. Like all they had to do was change the paint palette from a black suit to more of a gray and black suit on the action figure, and they could just sell those like crazy because we didn't care. We were old school comic book collectors and things like that. Variations of the Joker, and he'd have this kind of weapon or that kind of weapon. But then you get to this movie and you got this weird, grotesque penguin who's, and then you got Batman who doesn't have a different Batmobile or Batwing or anything. Like, I don't know. I can see all of that too. Like, and all of that does matter in the grand scheme of a franchise. Maybe not a movie, maybe, trying to make a film, trying to do whatever. But when you think about it, this is not a Batman film is bigger than a Batman film. It's part of a big, giant franchise. And that's what this company's been banking on. It's not worked well at times. So, Batman Forever.
Yeah, what were your thoughts on that? All I'll say before you say anything is the first time I saw it in the cinema, the first time, I absolutely loved it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like it. I didn't care for, and now it really grates on me, is the Tommy Lee Jones version of Two-Face. It's not Tommy Lee Jones.
Yeah,
it's brutal. It is brutal.
It's terrible.
And I don't say that just because of the color palette and the makeup and what I say. It's just never Two-Face. I don't know what character this is. Like he's not even like other villains to say, oh, he's really playing this kind of. It's just this weird character that has Two-Face in name, and a coin and a maroon face, but it really derails the film for me. I can't do it. I know we mentioned Jim Carrey briefly. Look, to me, Jim Carrey just got the script that he got. The zany elements of Riddler just kind of get away that because in the first part of the film they try to set up that he's this smart scientific guy, but then he behaves like a crazed person once he puts on the green pantsuit, the green tights.
Yeah.
So it just is, the film itself doesn't make sense. Like it just creates a conflict of he's this character, but then later he's just Jim Carrey playing a caricature, and I couldn't quite understand the decision making. I have to be honest though, man. I can still laugh and have a good time with this film. I can just kind of go along with it because I don't have any major issues with Val Kilmer. I could take him or leave him as Batman and Bruce Wayne. Yeah. I don't care for the Nicole Kidman love interest in this film. Like that, this is one of the love interest stuff that least works for me in all of the movies. This one just did not work. I don't know if it's maybe, there's a cliche on with some of the YouTubers that they didn't have charisma. I don't know if I picked up on that or not, but it doesn't work for me. So. It's a kind of Midland thing. It's one of those that can be on and I enjoy. I definitely will say I rewatch, and rewatchability is one of my factors in how to evaluate a film. It's more rewatchable to me than Batman Returns is. I catch myself rewatching it more than I would Batman Returns.
Okay, that's fair enough. Yeah. As I say, like the first time I saw it, I loved it, but as I've got older and as I've rewatched it, as you just pointed out, there are things that I can't stand in it anymore. Tommy Lee Jones is terrible. Just did not get the part, or maybe he just didn't understand. He's just being goofy, or wasn't even goofy. He wasn't even funny, was he? He was just dull, just boring. He was trying to play, like a bit manic, but it didn't work, didn't land for me. Jim Carrey tries to steal the show. Well, he pretty much does steal the whole movie, doesn't he? He just takes over. So that's kind of got a bit grating to me over time. I don't mind Val Kilmer. I don't mind Chris O'Donnell as Robin in this one.
This one, I agree. Anyway. This one was okay. It was okay. Like all of that was fine. I felt like
it's fun. It's fun, isn't it?
Yeah, I had a decent adventure time. I was fine with it, and I feel like it's too dark. We need to do this. We misconstrued what Campy and Adam West was trying to accomplish, and this was the end result. But parts of it I really like, and like I said, it can be on. So sometimes a movie can be on. And I could do other stuff. I could be on my computer. I could be doing some other work at the house. Batman Forever fits that mold perfectly. I can't do that with Two Towers. Two Towers is on. Lord of the Rings, Two Towers is on. I'm sucked into Two Towers.
You gotta watch it. Yeah,
I can't do other stuff. It's just too good. This is that perfect balance of it can be on. I can listen to it. I can watch a few scenes here and there, and I can be entertained. I don't even turn Batman Returns on usually. Like I just skip it. And I've watched it again here recently. I watched all of the Batman movies before seeing the new one to kind of get a better feel for the ranking of things.
Yeah.
And I want to watch the Catwoman scenes, and that's about it.
That's about it.
Perfectly honest, I was like, I was as I rewatched Batman Returns, I was like, he just drives up and does this. He just drives up and does that. It's like, okay, he doesn't get out of the car. Now he gets out of the car. Okay. Oh, all right. It's like I was so let down by so much of it. Like
it does feel like a very closed, small set, doesn't it? As you said, very narrow, very small. Yeah. I like it as a Christmas movie. I like that kind of theme, the Christmas theme, the snow and stuff. So
yeah, if Die Hard counts, do we have to start including films like Batman Returns? I love all the Nolan films. I'm not even sure we could do a whole stream just on how much I love the Nolan films.
Oh gosh, yeah.
Even Dark Knight Rises, which gets a lot of bad raps. I mean, I know what he's trying for. I really wish they had just done a couple things differently, but I don't hate it other than Batman Gives Up. Like that does literally my objection.
Yeah,
my objection to the whole thing is that he thinks the trilogy needs to end with Batman not being Batman. That's my only major objection is instead of them being at a cafe of they've gotten away and there's no longer going to be a Batman and everyone knows, it should have just been they're at a cafe and Alfred's there or maybe Alfred's not there and it's like sir, you have to go back to work now, like we need you back. And then like, I don't want Alfred, I'm good. And he's like, no, he's out, referring to like the Joker. So you don't even say who it is, just say he's out. It's like, okay, I'll be back. You know what I mean? It's just you set it up. Is that he's never going to escape this. He can't escape it. That's my only objection to the Nolan stuff, really, writ large.
This might be a little bit controversial take, but my favorite is Batman Begins over Dark Knight. Everyone goes mad for Dark Knight, and Heath Ledger is amazing in that. But I didn't like the Two-Face story. I thought there was too much in Dark Knight. He didn't need to do that. Should have kept it just as Joker. That's my opinion. I love Batman Begins so much. I just think it really nails the not even year one. It's more like the Legend of the Dark Knight we were talking about before. The first story in that, the Shaman by Denny O'Neil. And the Ra's al Ghul, or Ra's al Ghul, however you say his name, that side of it. It really felt like a Denny O'Neil comic book, the first one. What do you think?
I love it.
And Scarecrow as well. Having a Scarecrow for once.
Loved it. And I loved. I can agree with you on Dark Knight, because I feel like the ending of the Two-Face story, and he dies, was the problem. Like, just Batman, sort of like, I like the fact that he can always still be misconstrued, but he think, to me, the journey is more and more people in Gotham keep waking up that he's the one that's saving them. Like, he's the hero that they should be cheering for. Like, Gotham is always very divided of he's a vigilante versus he's a hero. And it seemed like it set up a perfect place where some people get it and some people don't. And the fact that he could basically reveal that he's the hero, not just to Gordon, but to Gordon's wife and child, would explain why Gordon then goes forward and has this sort of secret relationship with Batman to his family. Because that would eventually get out, and that would be really weird. Like, if I was the commissioner and I had to, my wife would figure out that I'm actually using the Batman to help me deal with my job, she'd be in my ear like, "Are you out of your mind? He's the criminal in all this." But to have him basically save their family, and then save Two-Face, like, so Two-Face doesn't actually die. It's like, no, Harvey needs to be in a mental hospital. We can save Harvey. Like, he can really have empathy for Harvey, and then he can ride away and be the villain to the other people who still think he's a villain. That's fine too. But so I can definitely agree that those type of things are issues that are very valid. But I can tell you what, man. The rewatchability of Dark Knight is off the chart. Like, even if I have issues with Dark Knight or whatever they are, the rewatchability of Dark Knight, from, the first sequence with the Joker in the bank, the hospital sequence, the thing on the bike, there are so many sequences. It's just, this movie is fantastic in that way.
Yeah,
I love it.
The Joker
Batman
is
Begins
awesome.
is almost heavy. I almost have to pay so much attention to Batman Begins. I almost end up in the Lord of the Rings Two Towers problem, where I got to pay more close attention. I can't do other stuff. That's
Pulls
for sure.
you in, doesn't it? It makes you focus. Yeah.
The
scene pops in the Dark Knight. Going back to that, one of my favorite scenes is where the Joker he's in the truck with his cronies, and he's trying to take out. Is it an armored truck with the transporting the prisoner? It's Harvey Dent, isn't it? Basically,
yes.
That scene is so good. When he keeps pulling out, like, bigger and badder weapons.
Right.
Just such a Joker scene, straight out of the comic book. I love that.
Right. Yeah. No, I agree. And even the with the bike, he hits the tank. Yeah. The tank version of the Batmobile, and he comes out on the bike and he's weaving around or whatever, and the truck flips, and just like, this is all so good. This is so good. So good. And Dark Knight Rises loses that element to me. It loses that funness that's kind of interwoven in there, and he's trying to be very serious. It's his final movie and whatever. That plane sequence in the beginning, though, is tremendous. Like, it's so
amazing.
Good.
What do you think went wrong with Dark Knight Rises? Where did it go wrong? You think he just tried to be too serious at the end?
I think a little bit of some of the seriousness, and then I said, like, the end, that he just kind of quits and stuff. But it gets a bad rap as a film. I really like the film. I really enjoy rewatching it. It's kind of in between. I don't have to pay as much attention as I would have to when I'm watching Batman Begins. So it's. But I will say that the amount of times I will rewatch Dark Knight are probably the other two films combined. Like, I just watch Dark Knight so much more compared to the other two. And the Bane thing kind of needed to be revisited a little bit. Like, someone needed to let him know, like, we still don't quite have this voice right. It is a little hard to follow sometimes. You can't, and it's not going to be for normies.
No, I quite like it, even though it's not comic book Bane. I like his performance as Bane.
It's okay, and I can handle it. And Bane would be a difficult one. The comic book version of Bane is definitely a next to impossible adaptation for film, because it just doesn't. No matter how you're going to go with that, you're going to have to be sacrificing things that are probably key elements. It's a real tricky one to adapt. There are certain things that are like that. They're going to be really difficult to adapt to film.
Do you prefer the Bane from Batman and Robin?
Oh.
At least he got the mask right. The red eyes.
I feel like there should be a 4-letter word that we should apply to Batman and Robin, so we don't have to speak of it anymore. We can just go, no, that one's just censored. We just that's just and the irony is there's so many missed opportunities there because Uma Thurman would be a great Poison Ivy. Like that
God,
would have
yeah,
been
she should have been like brilliant. Could have been brilliant.
Would Clooney be so badly thought of if they didn't have such ridiculous suits? I don't know.
Probably not.
I don't think so. I think the suits is a stigma attached to Clooney's performance. So Clooney gets a bad rap as Batman because the suits are so bad. Like I think that's part of it.
And also the relationship between him and Robin, and the way they wrote Robin in that one was terrible. They were always like arguing and fighting. It was unpleasant, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was really strange. They don't have a mentoring relationship at all. It was very, very, very strange. Arnold was being written like he was in like a 1980s action film instead of like the Batman. It was just the one-liners and stuff. It's just, like I said, they were trying to go for some more Adam Westy sort of campiness, and just they missed the mark at every level. Like they
went full camp without the fun.
It just got cringe and not fun. Joker voice is here. Good morning, my friend. You know what? I didn't want to derail my plans with Gray and having you hop in because obviously your Batman stuff would be a great part of the conversation because we've been talking about all sorts of things Batman. But I'm going to reach out to you. We can do something here soon. I got to figure out how to fetch you in, my friend. Let's spend an hour or so doing some stuff together. So I'll be talking to you. So Joker Voice is definitely a rising YouTuber. You guys should check out. Like-minded guys.
Cool.
Really
No worries.
Cool stuff.
Bring him
comic book movies, that kind of thing. So
yeah.
All right, let's talk comic books, man. You've been plugged into some modern stuff. I am not. I have comic books. There's some stuff on the shelf, but if I turn the camera around, it's literally all of the desk and stuff in front of me. This is all comic books and stuff. Most of this stuff's on eBay. Stuff I'm selling, stuff I'm not. Organizing, restructuring, that kind of thing. And what's going on with new comic books? Where are you at on your? This is what I'm reading. This is what's good. Where are you at on things that have been done? Let's say in the last 5 years.
Wow, 5 years. It's interesting that I only really got back into comics over the last 5 years. When I moved over to Japan, I kind of left it all behind. I had to sell most of my collection, only brought over a few things. So although I did pick up the Grant Morrison's Batman run, Pops, while I was in Japan, and that was 2006 or 7 it started. Okay. A couple of years. So I'm a big fan of him, big fan of his take on Batman too. These days, I'm reviewing more Spawn than anything else. There's 4 Spawn titles now. The Spawn universe, it's taken off, and I'm late to the character. I never used to read it when I was younger, so I've only started doing that since I started the channel last year. And yeah, I'm enjoying the Spawn titles. Like they're just good fun. Do you know what I mean? And they don't have any kind of agenda. There's no message in there.
How are you my age and you didn't have the Spawn?
I know. I don't know. I completely missed it.
By the way, that is the best. If there was a clip from this, that was it right there. Gray going, I know, I don't know. That is us when we reflect on our past of the mistakes that we made as sort of the nerds. Because, Spawn was a phenomenon, man. And
did you buy it? Were you buying it when it was coming out?
Oh, are you kidding me? Day one.
I missed it.
Day one. So the reason was I had overlap with McFarlane Spider-Man. So my friend had gotten Amazing Spider-Man 300.
I was buying that at the time.
And I was down the rabbit hole of the McFarlanes. And I will say this. I am a total honk for good covers. And whether or not you could say anything about his McFarlane runs, those covers are just like gems.
Yes.
Gems.
His art, even his interior art on the Spider-Man he did a short series, didn't he, just called Spider-Man. It was the writing was okay, but the art was amazing. Yeah,
I will say I revisited that recently. I have the Marvel app, as some folks may have heard me talk about on some other shows and streams, and I've been rereading. I reread that Spider-Man arc, and I couldn't agree more. I was so let down with some of the writing. Like I was like, man, I sure remember this as being better than this.
Yeah, when we were young.
Age well. Like, oh, this has got enough drop in. No, this is just here for no reason. But the art is next level.
Oh, totally.
And then it was like, oh, Todd McFarlane guy, he has a Spawn book. And I was like, oh, cool. I'm going to get that. And it sold out. And because I went and I actually paid $5 for a second copy, which at the time is a fair amount of money for books that are normally like $1.25, $1.50. I paid $5 for a second copy. and then I ended up giving one of my copies to a friend who didn't buy it like Gray. Just saying. I was hooked because it was so cool and fun. Joker Voice says that he let's see, he also all right, so I was making notes for my new Saturday video. The topic is something I've been noticing that I'm calling pop culture Stockholm syndrome. Oh, that's good. That's really good. I
Ooh,
look forward to that
interesting.
video. Yeah. And then he says, this was where I wanted to make sure I pulled it in. So I love the Spawn character of Spawn tattoo. Ooh.
Wow.
Ooh. You know what, Joker Voice? Take a picture of that so when we stream together, whatever, we can share that picture because I think that'd be kind of cool to see tattoos like that. Because someone that's that committed, that's pretty awesome. No take backs from a tattoo. The movie, not so much. The HBO animated series, amazing. Yes. We'll have to get Gray completely hooked onto the Spawn so he can take in the other content. Figure out how to get him a copy of the series because they don't have HBO Max there.
No.
So you're down the Spawn rabbit hole. McFarlane has spawned out into, pun intended, multiple titles.
It's a shame he's not drawing as much, isn't it? He's only doing like variant covers really these days. Yeah. He doesn't need to, does he? He's got it made, but he's still writing. He's writing Gunslinger, and he's doing like additional dialogue, they call it, with King Spawn and what's the other one? Sorry, not the Scorched, the main Spawn title. But they've got different writers on the different titles. They've got a guy called Sean Lewis doing King Spawn, which has been great. Pops, really good. That's only up to issue 9. It's a little bit like a kind of Spawn rebirth. You know, they're going back with some of the original characters and talking about his origins and things. So, and the art's beautiful. I think it's an artist called Javi Fernandez. He's doing great work. Brett Booth is doing the art on Gunslinger Spawn, which McFarlane's writing, and that's just been so much fun. Really good title. Recommend that. You should see the art in it. It's beautiful.
Gray does videos. He breaks a lot of these down for you folks. If you have any interest in comic books and trying to find something remotely recent to get into, he would. He's like in his Spawn run, that kind of thing. Yeah, I definitely had. I didn't last long in Spawn. I will say that I probably only lasted for about a year or so. I got into because when you got to let's see, 8 or 9 is the first appearance of Angela. Frank Miller does an issue. Yeah, you end up with some different cool things, and then about that time, I felt like we're getting trapped into like the '90s gimmick stuff. So I kind of bailed out of my Spawn collecting in real time. Later on in life, I did go back because some of these things would end up in like the quarter bins and things like that. So I ended up with like, some stuff into the issues in the 40s and the 50s.
Okay.
And then a few things a little bit later on. But I don't think I have much of that left. I think I have like a handful of Spawn left. I don't think I have much. I wish I had shown you. I didn't. We're going to talk about Spawn. I'll have to get it. So maybe I will pull up a different stream. I have an extreme. I'll show you this so you'll know what I'm talking about. And those of you that are our age will know what I mean. So I have a Spawn comic book that came from like a toy store in a mall.
Ooh. And
it came, Spawn number 1 came in like a wrapper like this. So it's sealed.
Wow.
This is a Toy Fair book with Boba Fett on it. But talking about this kind of bagging was common back then. They would do a lot of issues like that. So I still have that Spawn number 1 that I picked up many, many years later. And I remember it to this day because the guy had a whole bunch of them, and they were $6. And I thought to myself, I don't need another Spawn number 1. But I bought one. I wish I had bought a whole bunch of them, but I bought one. So yeah, Spawn is seeing a great rebirth. That's pretty cool. I know I've seen a lot of the art and some of the covers, but I haven't picked any up. You'd consider that a highly recommend or a recommend? You think you're going to go highly recommend, or certain pieces of it's highly recommend?
Just for one title, King Spawn, I would say.
Okay.
I don't know. It's difficult to say highly recommend, but for me, because I've got no kind of background with the character, I've been loving it. But maybe for someone who's read it before, maybe it's just kind of okay. Tricky.
Yeah.
One thing I wanted to mention, Pops, is we talked a little bit before we came on about Daredevil on the stream. I've been really enjoying Chip Zdarsky's run on Daredevil.
Okay.
That was one of the more recent comics I've read regularly. What did you think? Did you read any of that? His run on Daredevil?
No, I haven't. Joker Voice is going to agree with you that from what I've heard, King Spawn is off the chart amazing. Yep. All right. So we're getting some recommends here, folks. Check out some King Spawn, and he just gives kudos to McFarlane's line of toys, which are next level stuff. Yeah. Amen, brother. Amen. Yeah. So my Chip Zdarsky, no. I will go to the app and read it at some point. I've been trying to keep up with the Marvel growing universe of stuff that I hadn't read because
Yeah,
they're basically pulling mostly from stuff that they own outright from the last 10 years. I've
right.
actually heard that Chip Zdarsky's run on Daredevil is really good, and you're recommending that as well.
Yes, I'm like you. I've only been reading it on the app. I won't buy Marvel comics anymore because the quality is terrible. The paper quality, it's like almost like tracing paper, toilet
Oh,
paper. It's
geez,
really
okay.
bad. So yeah, I recommend that from the app. But
Okay.
for recent stuff, not really. The other one that jumps out is an independent title by Boom. Do you know Boom Comics? And the
Yes.
title is called Once and Future. It's about
Mm.
a kind of retelling of King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table, set in modern times.
Oh, that
That's
sounds like
by
a must for me then. I'm in then
Kieran
because
Gillen.
that sounds like a must for me. But I think we were offline. We were talking about it. I haven't bought any comic books, modern comic books, not any comic books, modern comic books,
Okay.
uh, other than Boom Comics and some independent stuff. The Turtle stuff, the
Yeah.
Last Ronin stuff for the Turtles. I bought a couple copies to read that, and then of
Okay,
course
nice.
I've spent most of my money supporting this new boom of Kickstarter slash Indiegogo creators, and I've been kind of investing in flipping graded books because that's been like this crazy wild market. So that's what some of my stuff's been said. And Joker admits, he goes, I am not a huge comic book a reader. My expertise is animation, TV, and film. Anyway, I understand,
Mm.
brother. And man, when you and I talk, Joker Voice and I talk, we will spend more time because I did not pigeon my conversation with Gray this morning in this avenue. But I think Joker Voice and I will enjoy talking more about the animated series. I want to talk to him about the animated series. And then the Joker movie is a little bit more of the direction I thought I'd go with him. And not to mention that tool named Kevin Feige in charge of not only Marvel Studios, but Marvel Comics, but you, brother, you have no idea how much it breaks my heart. It breaks my heart. I wish these people could understand how much money they're losing on the table because the comic books. So for those of you who don't know much about the speculation market, I don't know if you don't know much about this, Gray, but here in the States during the pandemic, people were just stuck in their home, have nothing to do with money in their pockets. Sports cards went crazy. Comic books went crazy. The rarity of things. Remember how things were just rare? It didn't matter if they were good or not. If they were rare, they were going up in value. Yeah, that's what happened again. It was nuts. It was completely nuts.
I've heard that back issues, yeah,
Yeah.
as you say, like back issues came back with a vengeance during the pandemic.
Do you remember I don't know if they had these in London or not when you were a kid, but do you remember like the trading cards, the Marvel Series 1 trading cards, Marvel Series 2 trading cards?
No, we didn't. I didn't have those. Didn't see them.
I think I have any in the room with me. I'll show. I'll send you a picture or something like that to Twitter when we talk next time. We could talk about that. But these cards were really kind of cheap, and they definitely got better. And by the time you got to like 1993, there was some really cool stuff. But these things in mint condition, they couldn't print things in mint condition back then. Like just the technology, things would be off
Right.
center and whatever. So there's a company that grades them and certifies them to be perfect, basically. Or there's a grading scale, but who cares? No one's going to buy a mid-grade card unless it's super, super old. But the
Mm.
baseball and sports card people started doing all of this, and you couldn't find these perfect cards. So during the pandemic, this stuff went nuts, and people scouring all of their collections for these perfect comic books, perfect trading cards. And Joker Voice, you said, I remember the Star Wars trading card, brother. The
Me too.
first 1977 trading cards, those first appearances of this, when they're PSA, they call it PSA. That's the company that certifies them.
Mm. Mm.
This stuff went nuts. So I say all this and ramble too many words to get to my point was I should have been buying hundreds and hundreds of dollars like of comic books and getting new comic books and getting addicted to the new versions of this, like you said, Chip Zdarsky and other artists and creators that I barely even know who they are. Instead, I'm buying and flipping things like this, a Wolverine Tron variant cover that has
Wow.
it's extremely rare. It's like Marvel, you could have actually made a profit of me if I had bought, a few $100s at your new shop, but so it's such a crime for some of these. And I have to be honest, I have mainly four comic book shops around me.
Oh,
And the
so
one that
lucky.
and the one that dealt mostly with new comic books only. I've shown up and his store's not open. I don't even know what his hours are because they don't match what's on the door. But he specializes mostly in new comic books.
Okay.
The one that specializes in back issues and almost back issues exclusively. I don't even know if he has new comic books. It's not only packed. I mean, the people there are like the traditional comic book collectors like us. They're talking about comic books. They're haggling over different things on the wall. I mean, I feel like I've been teleported back to that, the 1990s when this stuff was a boom.
Yeah, it's one thing I miss about the living in the UK. I've been over in Japan for it's going to be 20 years at the end of this year,
Wow.
so that's
Wow.
amazing. But I do miss the whole comic book scene. Of course, they have manga, manga shops here. There are mangas everywhere, but for American comics, there's only a couple of shops in the biggest cities like Tokyo or maybe Osaka. I don't know many places. There's one shop where I can get mail order from, but they only have the top, as they say, the top tier titles. You can't get hardly any indie books. Only Spawn if you're lucky. Spawn
Mm.
and sometimes Saga. They might do Saga, but that's it. Otherwise, it's DC and Marvel.
Oh, well, man, we're always here to hook you up, man. I know it's expensive. We'll
don't
figure out
don't
how to get.
worry.
We'll throw it on
No,
a
don't
boat.
worry.
Throw it on a boat. It'll get to you eventually. That's always my thing. So, uh, yeah. So, what else in the modern comic book arena could you sort of recommend or highly recommend?
Do you know the artist Sean Gordon Murphy? He's
Oh
been
yeah, yeah,
doing
yeah. Go
Batman,
for it.
The White Knight. That's kind
Hmm.
of separate universe. I recommend his stuff.
I will say I read online the Three Joker story. Isn't that the one
Oh,
Jeff Johns
yeah,
did?
Jeff Johns.
I'm
Yeah.
not sure what that's dated though, so that may predate my time restrictions because I thought
No,
that
no,
was a
that's
interesting
new.
story. Yeah,
Yeah, what did you think of it? Beautiful art. I
yeah,
can't
yeah,
remember
yeah.
the name of
Really,
the
just
artist. It's gone out of my head. But beautiful
the
art.
the tying in of the different variations. Even if I had some nostalgia bait issues, like it's totally playing on my nostalgia bait. It totally is. Jangle some keys and whatever. The art sucked me into, like, he just took me there, like I could believe this version of Joker and that one and this. It just really enjoyed the journey. But I didn't buy those. I had read them online, so
Okay.
that's a
Yeah.
little different of a process for me. So um yeah, White Knight I've heard come up several times now, so I'm going to have to somehow find a way to cave and figure out how to read White Knight, and we'll talk about that another time when I can give you my opinion and what I think. 'Cause that's you're not the first or the last person that's probably going to recommend that one.
No. The first one's the best. He's done a couple now, but the original Batman, the White Knight series, 6 or 8 issues is
Mhm.
really good. The second one is The Curse of the White Knight, which goes a bit kind of historical, into
Mhm.
Batman's past and the Wayne family's past. And then there was a limited Harley Quinn series that he drew, but he didn't write that. I think his wife or his partner wrote that. And Batman Beyond the White Knight has just come out, Pops. That's
Mm.
the first issue came out, I think, 2 weeks ago. That was pretty good. It's beautiful art. I'd recommend it for the art. That's why I picked up the physical for that. But yeah, have you seen
Joker's
much? Oh, sorry. Oh yeah, go for it. Joker's voice.
Yeah, he says, correct me if I'm wrong, the Three Joker story mentions the Joker's wife story element from Killing Joke. Absolutely. Absolutely. It ties in the Killing Joke version. Sort of like there's three main different versions of Joker, and you're kind of whittling this down to where we really are on things. Some really cool stuff. Some really cool stuff there. I want to let Gray continue down his thought process, Joker, before I come back around to your other comment about manga, because I want to kind of transition. Because when we go down the manga rabbit hole, we probably won't come back to where we are. So we'll stay where we
Don't
are for
don't do
now.
it. Don't do
We'll-
it.
it's this is a new thing for me. We're not old enough to be called boomers, but I do like that. It's a kind of a joking adjective for me. So I
Oh
definitely
yeah.
will boomer on this thing and trying to juggle chat. I can see why people have to have moderators and people helping them do this because it can be very overwhelming. Go ahead, show me what we're seeing here.
It's some of the art from Batman Beyond the White Knight. So
Oh
just
man, that is some
just
good Batman Beyond looking stuff there. So that's another
yeah.
nostalgia bait thing for me. Is I loved Batman Beyond, the show. Like my kids loved it. So
Okay.
when
I
your
never saw
boys,
it. I missed
oh
it.
my gosh, I love it so much. I don't know if you have apps to stream certain things and you can just buy it at a reasonable price for you or not, but the Batman Beyond cartoon series. It is not the Batman animated series because that is to me like the classic. But
Oh
it
God,
is
yeah,
so much fun. Batman Beyond
amazing.
is so much fun. I loved it so much. So the fact that they're tapping into that part of my nostalgia bait, I have to admit that I'm kind of in. Yeah, I'll have to figure out a way to. Hmm,
Again, that's
probably.
thanks to Batman '89, isn't it? Basically, that's thanks to
Yes.
that we got the animated series, the original.
Have you seen the comic books with those like homage covers on them?
Yes, I have. Yeah, they used to have one. Was it the Batman Adventures? It was called. They were drawn in that style, the same as the animated series. I didn't buy them. I didn't collect them because I thought they were kind of geared for a younger, younger audience. But I'm not sure.
Make sure I'm talking about the right thing. It's this. Let me see if I got this right. Let me share my screen. This has been redone relatively recently, and this was a very tempting. Again, this would be secondary market though. This would not be out of a comic shop.
Okay.
Have you seen these that they did? Where'd it go? Come on now. There he goes. This right here.
Oh, it's a current limited
Yeah.
series. Yeah,
Yeah,
Batman '89. I
Batman
have.
'89, the Superman '78 now.
Yeah, yeah.
These Virgin covers right here where they took out the text and you just get the art. God, that's so cool.
Wow.
Those are so pretty. And there's a Superman '78 as well. So and Superman's facing the opposite direction, so they almost like fit. They would fit so nice to each other as a
Mm,
decoration. Boy, they're on like the want at some point list.
you get lost in the
Financial.
variant cover
Yeah.
market, don't you, with those?
Ooh, well, I'm a pick and choose kind of person. I'm not. I got to have every variant cover. I used to be. You know how Legends of the Dark Knight hooked me. I had all 5 colored covers and everything like
Oh,
that.
did you? I
I was
only had them one.
OCD about having them all. I was terrible. Yeah, my Legends of the Dark Knight thing was something to be. I mean, they were perfect. Every single issue was perfect. I would almost have them earmarked. Like if I didn't have a perfect copy, I would wait till I could get the perfect copy. I would read the
Wow.
other. I would read some of them ones here and there, but the collection part was separate.
Were you
Yeah, I
buying
had.
those at the time they were coming out? Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
I remember that
Uh,
series. Yeah,
let's see.
loved it.
Okay, so I think Joker's trying to say he has to kind of have to bow out, but he did make this comment earlier. He basically says the let's see, manga. There it is. There it goes. Manga is kicking America's comic books. So, are you shocked by this crazy manga phenomenon? I mean, you've been living through
No,
it for 20 years over there.
I know, and it's still huge, and it still sells physical as well as digital over here. Yeah, I think it's because of the younger readers in the states. This is
Mm,
just my ideas on it. Is there isn't much, or there aren't many comics geared for that kind of age group. Say up to 10, under
okay.
tens, and I
Right.
think
Right.
that's
Right.
why mangas work so well. And also you get more for your buck, even though it's black and white. You usually get like 180, 200 pages for
Wow.
about $7, $8, don't you?
That's a lot. Wow, I didn't realize they were all that thick for $7 or $8. There's that
Mm.
much of it that's okay for little kids like that.
Yeah, I mean, there's all sorts. There is a little bit more risque stuff as well, but like things like One Piece, the big titles, the famous ones, they're Naruto. Yeah, they're for any and all ages. They're really good.
Yeah.
Can be a little bit sexy though sometimes. If you don't mind pictures of well endowed women, which I
Hmm.
don't. Of course, I love.
Hmm. Uh, yeah. I think in the States, the area of manga has grown so exponentially. It's
Mm,
really been shocking for me. It's something that I just have never really been that connected to, and I'm sort of kind of backwards appreciating a lot of the stuff as well as anime for me. Like it wasn't my
me
thing,
too.
and now
Me
I'm
too,
sort of kind
pops.
of
To
like
be fair,
backwards going back and
yeah.
getting into more things. And Brandon the anime guy is this great YouTuber. So you guys don't know who Brandon the anime guy is. He does some great stuff, and he does a good job of staying kind of high level in some videos. So it's like you don't have to. He can highly recommend that kind of thing. So Joker Voice is bowing out. This is great to finally see your channel and talk to us. Listen, bro, we are definitely going to schedule a time and talk to you. He's a to borrow from Ryan Roger Athe. I always don't know how to pronounce his last name. I need to clarify that with Ryan. He's a rising star. Joker
Oh,
Voice.
cool.
Um, well, the other thing that happened, I think I have me see if I have a link for the one I wanted to show you. Was tomorrow though. It's birthday day. Somebody celebrates a birthday. I think we should pay special homage.
22nd of April, is that right? Tomorrow?
22nd of April. You're ahead of me, so that's probably like moments away or something, right? Because you're Jack turns 85. Our Joker
Wow.
from Batman '89. Man, I saw that and I was like, I gotta coordinate because basically the Batman came out on HBO Max on our Monday, and now Jack's having a birthday on our Friday. So I'm like,
Friday.
okay, this seems like a great week to do a Batman stream. And Nicholson, when I rewatched Batman '89, I really wanted to focus on his performance because of this birthday and why I was bringing him up. That freaking performance is so good because there's so many balancing acts that he's doing between serious mobster, mentally ill, psychotic, and sort of like comic relief clown. And this little triangle of his performance, and you see this little balance that's always happening, and nothing ever gets too far. All three of them are constantly moving in like this perfect moderation. Because it's a comic book movie, and we talk about so much other Batman stuff, I don't think we could ever say enough about how good a performance this is. It's almost like it's an underrated performance. It's hard to say that in some ways, but it's when you go back and watch it and you kind of look at it from that angle where you see this balancing act that he's doing, because you could easily be delivering this, too comedically or too dramatically or whatever, and it's brilliant, absolutely brilliant performance. So, happy birthday to Jack.
Yeah, happy birthday. Wow. I've appreciated it more as I've got older, Pops. As you say, I watched it recently. I watched it just after Christmas, Batman '89, and it is brilliant. It is genius. I thought he kind of course, he overshadows Keaton, doesn't he? He takes over the movie, Nicholson, but it's more layered than you realise. For example, much more layered than Jim Carrey as the Riddler in Batman Forever.
Sure.
Yeah.
So staying on Nicholson, I know it's kind of a complete wide open, but let's talk about this guy's legacy of roles. I mean, obviously, no one's going to wish him. Hopefully, he will have many, many more years. But the amount of films and his performances, I don't think it's just about quantity of films. And you talk about everything from the Little Shop of Horror type stuff he did way back at 1960 and stuff like that. But you start looking at these films and you start realizing this maniacal sort of suave guy, some of these performances, man, like obviously the One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest is one that always comes to my mind. But then you get into like Chinatown and some of the mafia stuff that he dabbles with, A Few Good Men, Hoffa. What a great craftsman. Like he just really has a special aura about him that you can't put your finger on, because I think we were growing up during this. I think it was around the time of Batman, wasn't it, where someone did something in traffic and he's on top of their car with a crowbar in his hand or a golf club. It was a golf club in his hand or whatever. There's some sort of crazy Jack Nicholson story that happened. But
you don't remember.
There's not a lot of these stories, but there was that one, and I'm like, yeah, it's 85th, 85 Nicholson. All I could say is, as us Batman fans, Jack, you made our life so special. What a great portrayal, man. I tell you what. Yeah. Because at the time, right, we talked about this before we started, Batman '89 was announced, and they cast Mr. Mom as Batman and Jack Nicholson as Joker, and none of us knew exactly what to think or expect. We're like, the Pee Wee Herman guy is going to direct Mr. Mom as Batman with Jack Nicholson as Joker. And I think we're all like, I have no idea what to expect. And it just blew our minds. Yeah.
There's some very good documentaries about that, aren't there? That go, that talk about how it was made, the making of it, and then the huge effect it had, the huge the box office it took, of course. Yeah, Jack Nicholson. I mean, there's so many films, just too many to name. He was in Easy Rider, wasn't he? He was good in that. He was, of course, The Shining's another one that everyone talks
Oh
about.
yeah, yeah.
Shining is just
Yes.
crazy Jack, different
Yeah.
kinds of Jacks.
Yeah, Crazy Jack in Shining and Crazy Jack in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. That sort of comedic alpha. Yeah, that was just. That is probably far. If I have to kind of as a critic put on like the grade your performance thing, that's the one that to me is just unbelievable. Is that one? Older Jack, playing some of the mafia-esque type roles like The
Mm,
Departed. I really like The
mm.
Departed where he's playing Frank Costello.
He's great in that. Yeah.
Hoffa obviously transforms into Hoffa. That was fine. Obviously, the Few Good Men. He's going to go down in history with these great lines. You can't handle the truth. Those kinds of things. And then,
Sounds like today. It sounds like
yeah,
Twitter.
for that, yeah. So yeah, I love anniversaries and these little moments to pause and remember and whatever. So I always want to use my channel and along that lines too, where I can kind of take note and make a little clip that we can, say happy birthday to Jack and because it's just, I hate to say it this way, it'll be over some point. We're all gonna move on, and that's it. That's your legacy, and his has just been broad and wide, touched so many of us. So, man, it's been a great time chatting with you. Yeah, it's already
me
7.
too.
It's already been an hour and a half. It's like crazy how fast time goes by when you do this and you have a good time.
Absolutely. Yeah, I had a great time.
When are you? Could you do a lot on weekends? When are your sort of? Do you have a set filming schedule? Do you have a certain show you always do at a certain time? What is your sort of plan for folks?
Not really, no. Apart from trying to have new comic book reviews out on either Tuesday or Wednesday,
Mm-hmm.
if I manage to make them. I try and do more live streaming, but I'm limited to my time, as you know, with a time difference. And I appreciate, Pops, you getting up extra early and doing this at this time for me. That really, really helps. But at the weekends, I'm open pretty much, all day. So, yeah. If we
Good
could
stuff,
do another
folks.
stream sometime, it'd be great to talk more about comics and, well, anything pretty much. Yeah, comics
Sure.
or movies with you.
Sure, that's awesome. We'll definitely put links there so you can connect with Gray and his channel. It's some great content. Learn more about comic books, movies, and other stuff that he's interested in. He can recommend, and that's it. Folks, go out there, make today the best day of your week. Find some cool stuff and things that you like, and share with others. So that'll be our time with